Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. A little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP, and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks question mark kicks.
Just like that, we're back. We're together and we're ready for Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, the late night edition, getting set for UFC Fight Night. Lewis versus Spivac. And listen, I see it from Kurtar over there in the chat already. Is everyone else double screening Bellator? Yeah, we are. We got it on the TV up there. I mean, Magomedov taking on Henry OK Corrales, but a big-time card with the UFC. You have the road to the UFC finals on the prelims. You have one fight on the prelims that is now off the prelims. It's just off the card completely. But a lot of really good fights on that main card, getting you set for Spivac versus Lewis, a main event that we were supposed to have back in November when Derek Lewis was forced out. Said this week that it was COVID-related, so ultimately we end up with the fight now. Matt, you want to give yourself pats on the back, do you?
Derek Lewis tricked some of y'all, guys. That's the thing. Derek Lewis weighed in, ding, 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 at 265, which is where he always weighs in at. And I just thought it was funny because that was something I really wanted to bring up at the start of the week. It was, hey, I wonder what Derek Lewis is going to weigh in at. That was a question that I posed to you, and we both agreed it's probably going to be in that, like, 263 or up, because that's the thing. If you cut weight as a heavyweight, you can go past the limit by a pound or two. You know, you weigh a lot. You might stay in the sauna for an extra hour, 45 minutes, who knows. But I thought it was interesting to see Lewis look physically at least very similar to what we have seen in the past, because I feel like the people who were picking Derek Lewis coming into this week were, hey, this is an old dog who's learned some new tricks, but I think those people might be short on answers after seeing his weigh-in yesterday.
I mean, listen, the fancy pictures of James Harden, you brought them up. He still played pretty well.
He did.
So there is
James
that.
Harden's not 38 years old, doesn't get punched in the head. That's the big difference.
He's only 37.
My bad. But that is the thing about Derek Lewis. He's been so good in the heavyweight division for so long. Are we starting to see the tread on the tires get removed? And that's the thing. If he does lose to Sergey Spivac, I think it's fair to say that Derek Lewis is no longer really in that top 10 atmosphere. Maybe he can have fun fights with guys in that top 10 to 15 or outside the rankings. But I think it is just about it for Derek Lewis if he doesn't win tonight, I should say.
Well, we are definitely going to end off on the send-off with Derek Lewis taking on Sergey Spivac in that main event. Make sure you hit up the chat over there. Prince Vegeta's son, Kurtar, Blind Dog, Cameron is over there as well, Sirkin Maz, and we also have Ray talking about road to UFC. I mean, listen, we had a video that came out. I banged my elbow right there, but The Fighting Handbook, road to UFC. We touched on it. If you missed it, make sure you go out there and check it out. The tournament finals on this card, flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight. And that fight at lightweight, Anshul Jubli taking on Jeka Saragih. Oh my gosh, you talk about traction on that one. A lot of people very excited about that fight. Hype 3 MMA, latest QMK in history. I think it might actually be. I think you might be right with that one. We might have to check out the tape, but this is pretty late for the show. And then as you could tell from the start of this video, tomorrow morning, like a look behind the glass, we're going to be filming the videos for UFC 284. So that tells you what you need to know. Honestly, I'm probably going to watch Bader versus Fedor. I'm going to go to bed, and then in the morning, we're going to rewatch some of those fights, but we're also going to get it set for UFC 284. As you know, with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, we talk about the fight of the night. Now, Jeong Kim, Mandy Boom, was not in the fight of the night screen, so we don't have to worry about that. Choi taking on Kyle Nelson, and for a lot of people, this might be the first time you've seen a Choi fight. He hasn't fought in a meaningful amount of time. It's been a few years since he really kind of capped off the losing streak, but it still is ongoing. Hasn't picked up a win in many, many years. Take on Kyle Nelson, who is 1-4 in the UFC. His lone win comes over Polo Reyes. Hit him with that body shot. His last time out at 155, so you can see it there on screen. Those weigh-ins are not updated. But he took on Jai Herbert, landed some really good leg kicks. He's got a good camp coming into this one. The weight cut went well. 145.5 is what he weighed yesterday on the scale. This should be a banger of a fight because I think a lot of people might be down on Kyle Nelson because he's not in the UFC Hall of Fame like a guy like Doo-Ho Choi. But this fight is the ultimate great reset for South Korea's Doo-Ho Choi here.
It's a really important reset for both these athletes, if we're being honest, because a loser probably ends up going home or to another organization. Like, for as much as we all like Doo-Ho Choi and the crazy fights that he has been involved in throughout his crazy MMA career, it hasn't been all that successful as of late. That's a big drop down going from losing to guys like Jeremy Stevens and Cub Swanson, much closer to their prime, to fighting a guy like Kyle Nelson, who, no disrespect, he is an exciting fighter, but he is 1-4 in his last 5 in his own right. So I think this is a really important fight for both guys, and hopefully we get the best version of what it could be, because both guys have their backs against the wall, so hopefully they come out throwing, because if that's the case, it should be a great fight for Doo-Ho Choi, and Kyle Nelson can more than hold his own in that style of a fight.
And it is a tough one. Cool Banana Boy saying easy win for Choi, but when a guy's been away with a torn ACL, a broken arm, and the eye issues that Choi's had, I have no idea what version's going to show up. And likewise, for Doo-Ho Choi's last time out, he fought at home in Busan. He's from Busan, South Korea. He fought Charles Jourdain, injured before the fight, broke his arm in the fight. Now he gets to travel a little bit west and take on Ontario's own Kyle Nelson. So that is definitely a contender for fight of the night. But the second fight that's on the card, Jeong Yeong Park representing South Korea as well. In Korean top team, you have Doo-Ho Choi, it's Korean Zombie MMA. So Korean top team for Jeong Yeong Park taking on Denis Tiuliulin. And I see a lot of people going with Denis Tiuliulin this week, and I'm not going to fault them or laugh at them whatsoever because I kind of laid it out in our video. He never stops mashing buttons, and if you look at it for Jeong Yeong Park, he's kind of slight. He's fast of foot.
He's
kind of
jerky.
He's herky-jerky, but he holds his hands out there quite a bit when he does defend, and he gets hit quite hard. So for Denis Tiuliulin, a great opportunity for him in this fight, and Tiuliulin might be overlooked as an underdog here tonight.
I think he could be, because he is the more likely to get a finish, especially early on in the fight, because once Tiuliulin gets momentum with his combinations, he lands a lot of power punches in rhythm, really, and there's not much you can do as a result of it, so he does have a great chance to win. But the thing is, Park is so much more well-rounded, and that's the big question mark going into it.
Malone Hart with a giant super chat.
Malone.
So we gotta pause the action. It's behind me here. You get the Fight Night picks. It's a prediction MVP. Matt won it last year. Malone Hart gets it for this show. It is for this show.
It's way colder than -2 degrees, though, right now. I can assure you that.
Yeah, I mean, I posted it on my Twitter there last night. I think it was like -29? Feels like -40 something.
It was I just walked to my car and back, which is like a 45-second walk, and it was just awful.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And I played hockey this afternoon at the Stanley Agrena. It's not an arena, and it's not a riding arena. It's an agrena. They mix the two together, an agricultural arena. And usually that's the coldest rink you're ever going to get into. I swear to you, it was warmer in that rink than it was outside. And that's one of the ones where they used to raise the garage door in the winter to keep it that cold. So wild stuff there. It is very, very cold, so hopefully everybody's out there keeping warm.
Well, thank you, Malone.
And we're going to pump you up. I mean, OK Corrales taking on Magomedov on our other screen. We start off with Tatsuro Taira taking on the UFC debutant, Mexico's own Jesus Aguilar. Matt, Jesus was amped up for the face-offs for this one. And then they made him wait, and they made him wait, and they made him wait, and he looked like a dad. Like, if he didn't look like a dad before with the goatee, he looked even more like a sad dad, like whose stepkid finished third in a karate meet. So Jesus Aguilar, he gets to take out that aggression, and he gets set to take on Japan's Tatsuro Taira. Both these guys grapple in their own rights, but Matt, they're both very different in the way that they grapple, and that's what makes this fight a lot of fun. And when they strike to close distance, well, Taira doesn't really strike to close distance. He strikes to keep distance, but Aguilar does. And boys, oh boys, is he fun to watch.
It is really fun to watch, but the problem is, how effective is that going to be at the highest level? And I gotta be completely honest with you, I know we've had a lot of prospects come through the flyweight division as of late, and they've been very high level. They've really been, kind of finished products as they come in. Think about, Muhammad Makayev. He is a really high level prospect who seems to basically be a finished product. That's how good his grappling is. For Tatsuro, his wrestling is different than a guy like Megamed, or Makayev, but it is that dominant and that much of an X factor. When he gets that upper body clinch on guys, his wrestling is that high of level, and that good in combination with his wrestling. Like, if he doesn't get the first throw, he's going to continue to pursue it after you defend it the first time. And for Aguilar, I think he's going to almost invite the takedown a couple of times, which might be the worst case scenario, because if he is too comfortable grappling off his back, which might be the case because he can threaten with submissions off his back, and he is very effective from that position, it's just so hard to win rounds from that spot if you're not able to get a finish. And that's why I do think Tatsuro is the favorite in this matchup by such a large majority.
Yeah, he's a giant favorite in this one.
The better striker on the outside, I would say. And then also on the ground, Jesus Aguilar is a good grappler, but the thing is, he probably will try to go from his back a little bit more. And again, it is really difficult to win rounds that way.
Yeah, 90% of the fans at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram that voted on the poll are going with Tatsuro Taira. He's what, like a minus 1100, minus 1200
and I've
favorite?
been impressed with him in the UFC up until this point. I know his skill set, there were some question marks around it about just how well it would transfer coming over, but I gotta be honest, like, his progression and his skill set have both really impressed me up until this point.
Yeah, if you do look at it for Taira, he does have really good upper body throws, really good trips. He is really kind of starting to gain with his striking from that long range. And if you look at it for Aguilar, throws hammers to close the distance and just goes and goes and goes. He's got a really high motor, and I do like that out of him because he can continue to push that pace from the first round to the second round to the third round when most men would just kind of tire out and fizzle out. So for Aguilar, he has a good opportunity in this one, but for me, I do like Tatsuro Taira, not really switching up on that pick. I think he's going to cruise to a win here. And my comparison at the start of the week was, is Aguilar better than CJ Vergara? I think Vergara is better than Aguilar, so for that stupid, silly reason, don't base a pick off of that. But I think Taira is going to cruise the win in this one.
Yeah, I've been really impressed by him. He's a big favorite for a reason. Like, he is a very talented young prospect. He does seem to get better fight in and fight out, which is what you want to see from a guy who is this young in his career. So I do have Taira.
Argument over there in the chat about making averages of height, so that's fun. We've got Star Smith 77 Porter, just my 2 cents. Prince Vegeta Son, Justin Franks, everybody hang out over there in the chat. Make sure you toss a like, and we'll continue rolling as we get into our next fight, Matt. We already touched on it, but Jeong Yeong Park taking on Denis Tiuliulin. And for Tiuliulin coming into the UFC, as I said at the start of the week, I had no gosh darn idea what he was going to be. Like, I thought he was going to fight poorly. I thought he was going to have a bad showing in his fight against Aliaskhar Pizriev. First round was bad. Second round, he kind of rallied and started striking well. And then he got taken down and just out of a bad position, got his back taken. He ends up getting submitted by Pizriev. And then his next time out takes on Jamie Pickett. A little bit of a back and forth in the first round. Latter stages of the first round, Tiuliulin takes over. Second round, he caught a body in that one.
He certainly did.
So he really did look, again, like the fighter that we saw over on the regional scene where he was 10-5. And he fought the same way against varying levels of competition. If you were, a pop can, he fought the same way as he fought against a guy like Pizriev or like Jamie Pickett in the UFC. So good to see he didn't get away from what got him to the dance. But for Jeong Yeong Park, you kind of touched on it at the start of the week, and somebody went out there in the comments section tried to be nasty with it, but you said that Jeong Yeong Park was really sneaky, and I think he is, because if he starts to struggle in a discipline that you think he's good at, like his boxing against a guy like Joseph Holmes,
switch her up.
Yeah, just drop of a hat. Oh, I'm a wrestler now. And in the fights that Parks wrestled in and had success, he's won in the UFC.
And I think that's an area in this fight where he should have some level of success in. Now, the thing about Tiuliulin that I don't know if we talked about it enough, he's way bigger. Like, he's huge for this weight class. And
yeah, he is.
Not that Park is a small middleweight. He's very stocky. Like, he just fits into the division. But I do think that Tiuliulin can use some of his physicality to defend some of the early takedowns. But I do think that the longer this fight goes, and the more that Park can make it a varied fight, the more it should help him in this matchup. Because if Tiuliulin's not able to get his rhythm, get his distance, and get just sort of that downhill actions going with his combinations, I think he's going to have a hard time, because when he does struggle with his takedown defense, it puts a lot of questions in his mind with his striking too, and that's the problem. If Tiuliulin's not really letting his hands go, well, he's not a big kicker, he's not the greatest of offensive wrestlers himself, he'll just kind of stall out on the outside. Now again, even if Tiuliulin does do that, he won't get as tired, so I guess that is a positive, and if he does land on Park at really any point throughout this fight, he does have the power to put him away. So again, for those reasons, it's a difficult fight to predict, but I just think that since Park is the more well-rounded fighter, and I do like him if the fight goes late, that's why I have to pick with the Iron Turtle.
Park has quality UFC wins, but the thing that scares me, Park opened minus 245,
Don't love the odds.
minus 228 now. Tiuliulin opened. Does the internet decides to get slow? Maybe it's frozen. Does the internet freeze? The cables freeze? Plus 189 right now for Tiuliulin, but I know that this is going to be a bit of a subject over Fight Night Picks on Instagram. The votes on the polls, they're really one-sided. 76% going with Park. I think Park has wins over good quality UFC opponents. I didn't think Tiuliulin was going to be great in the UFC. I kind of like Jamie Pickett more than the average duck, I guess. But for me, I do like, Jin Young Park for that reason. Charles Bell really just giving the fist bump over there to Malone Hart in the chat. I honestly have a hard time on this one. There's a few fights that I'm 50-50, so I don't love the odds on Jin Young Park. It's pop and popcorn. I've got Park ever so slightly, but you can make a strong argument for Tiuliulin, and if he wins... Well, I'm eager to see who they match him up with next. Maybe they go with somebody like Marc-Andre Barrio or Chidi and Joko on.
And that's the fun thing about a guy like Tiuliulin. He's probably not going to be a top 15, top 10 guy anytime soon, but his fights are going to be fun no matter who the matchup is. So that'll be fun moving forward.
Kind of like Henry Corrales.
I think the Njoku is a good call. I think that'd be a really fun fight.
Matt, the next fight, I see it there. Franks is saying Mandy Boom is marked out. Yeah, as you can see from the tweet from Aaron Bronstetter.
Do I look
Mandy
sad
Boom
right
is
now?
And it sucks because I was going to switch the pick. I was going to pick the monster Mandy Boom to win her first fight in the UFC after all the terrible things I said. I was so unprofessional at the start of the week, and now the fight's off, Matt. Your thoughts?
That's pretty... I gotta be honest, now that you don't get that, 15-minute reprieve to go get a snack, or, use the bathroom, or just do anything.
Lord Sanko on the call tonight, Matt. The first of the fights, Road to UFC tournament. We have Hyun-Sung Park taking on Seung Choi. This is for, I assume, a little trophy. That's usually what they give out for Ultimate Fighter. I don't remember what they gave out for Road to UFC Japan, to be completely honest with you, but... Park taking on Choi, and this is a very fun fight in this division because I see a lot of people taking Choi for the same reason that a lot of people are taking Yi Zhe later on against Jeong Yeong Lee, and in this matchup, it's because Choi's got a motor. Choi goes out there, he can strike for the first round or so, and then he really likes to implement his grappling, and for Choi, he trains at such an interesting gym, and we're going to get into it. I know Shoot the Box has a guy making his debut next weekend that happens to Muay Thai for a bit, but he's got 11 wins by submission. He's taking on Zubair Tukhugov. Make sure you check that one out. When it comes up tomorrow, Malone Hart with another super chat. FYI, the Iron Turtle nickname is in honor of a legendary Korean Admiral Yi Sun Shin. Sorry for the boring message.
That's not boring at all. We all learned something new right there.
Appreciate that super chat. So in this matchup, Matt, again, you have a guy next week, and I was saying, out of Shoot the Box, he's a submission artist, but he trains at a very striking heavy gym. And we had that, in Cody Stamen's fight against Luan Lacerda. He's a grappler out of Novo Uniao, and his striking's not quite there. Seung Choi is that grappler wrestler out of Korean Zombie MMA, where they tend to strike, but TKZ is good on the ground as well.
He is, yeah,
in some of his fights. That Dan Ige fight was great. So Choi takes on Park, Matt, and I'm eager to get your thoughts on this one because people might not be up to speed on this fight.
We've talked about these fights a lot. That's the thing. Now, I do favor Choi's grappling, and I do like his progressive grappling. He's not someone who's just going to sit there in the open guard and not do anything. He's going to look for a submission. He's going to try to damage you, and those are all very nice things to see. It's just with Park, I do think he has an advantage on the feet in this matchup, and I know that's a wild thing to say because he did get dropped in, the first 20 seconds of his last fight, so it might be a bit of a controversial take, but the thing is, Park is a decent, and especially he's a disciplined kickboxer. He's going to throw good kicks to the body, good kicks to the leg. I like his boxing up top, and he is a good offensive wrestler too, and I think that's the most important thing. I think Park, is going to be able to decide, okay, this is when we're striking, this is when we're grappling, and that's why I do favor him in this matchup. But it should be an interesting fight to kick off these finales, I guess, that we have in these 4 matchups.
Matt, when I do look at this one, I do favor Park's overall skill set in a matchup like this. That's why I took him at the start of the week. And if you have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes on the fight, 77% going, well, that's Jiyoung Kim. 81% going with Park, wow. 19% going with Choi in this one. Let us know over there in the comments section. Fender Jazz saying wild about Corrales, had a sprinkle on Magomedov inside the distance. Corrales defending those takedowns.
Oh, man, still getting it done.
Turning Magomedov into a striker. I mean, the guy that knocked out Aaron Pico. So both of us in the first fight in this overall tournament going with Park. Our next fight, Matt, Rinya Nakamura taking on Toshiomi Kazama. And in this one, I said at the start of the week, he offered me some pushback, but I do think Rinya Nakamura, out of all of these fighters, all 8 of them out of this tournament, has the highest ceiling. Yeah. Now, it's hard to project the ceiling in the UFC once he gets there, but the best part about this fight, folks, is the fact that Toshiomi Kazama, his striking's not as complete as Nakamura, But his jiu-jitsu is, I mean, he was an ADCC Asian champ, IBJJF Asian champ in 2018, 2019. The jiu-jitsu really does complement his overall MMA skill set. And for Nakamura, world championship wrestler, under 23 worlds, he really did let it all hang out. He was an Olympic hopeful there. But then he parlayed it over into MMA, and he just made his debut a couple years ago, and his strikings really look crisp for a guy that's made that transition. So I really love this fight, but again, let us know who you have in this one. Just my 2 cents saying singlet over a gi here. It's not often people say that. Like, the wrestler's
at the
gonna
highest
beat the
level,
jiu-jitsu
though, it
player.
is, though. That's the thing. Like, when you have the background of a guy like Nakamura, it is very hard to match that in the jiu-jitsu world.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, Naaman Gracie versus Ed Ruth.
Naaman Gracie's a multiple-time black belt, though.
Again.
Ed Ruth tried to grapple with him and said throughout, ooh, I'm going to grapple with this guy. And also, Naaman Gracie's a far better striker. That's what the difference is. Nakamura's better on the feet, can decide when they're grappling or when they're striking. And I just don't think he's going to get caught with a submission when Kazama's off his back. Like, again, unless you're like a Brian Ortega, Fabricio Verdum level grappler, it's not often we see guys get submissions off their back. It really isn't. Like, it is a very rare phenomenon in MMA. I know it's really cool when it happens. It's like a crazy poster dunk or a one-shot knockout on the feet, but it's just not all that often that we see because they're very rare. It's a very skillful technique that's required to pull something off like that. So I just think Kazama, this is a very difficult matchup for him because Nakamura is very heavy on top. He does damage very well with his ground and pound too, and that'll be important. And like I said, I just don't think he's going to get caught in some left open submission because he's getting sloppy in the top.
Yeah, I mean, 84% at Fight Night picks going with Nakamura in this one. Had him at the start of the week and still going with him. But again, it seems like one of those fights. You got to watch out for Kazama. He is a big underdog. Nakamura open minus 350, minus 471. Little rich there. Kazama at a plus 358. Prince Vegeta-san going with the hybrid. And Serkan Maz while going with Corrales just won. Monsoon Matt, a guy who fought Neil Magny years ago and then left the UFC. Craig Hart, lock for fight of the night or performance of the night. Now, that's a good question. Again, we have Park Tiuliulin, we have Choi Nelson.
The main event's probably going to end via stoppage. Like, I doubt that's going to go 5 rounds. The UFC always likes kind of highlighting main card fights with their bonuses, so I could easily see that going as a performance bonus to either Spivac or Lewis, because again, knockout for Lewis or TKO or submission for Spivac.
Yeah, I think you're going to end up with a fight that's not in the tournament winning probably a bonus, so it is kind of hard to say, but I would say Park Tiuliulin fight of the night, Choi Nelson could be fight of the night, and then in the co-main event, that could get wild because Devin Clark's mouth bleeds a lot.
It does.
And Fight of the Night usually has a little bit of that. Prince Vegeta-san saying, where's Bellator? Online. In Canada, it's on YouTube. So they listen, they haven't secured a TV deal. And that's all right with me if they're going to keep showing those fights for free. Matt, the third fight in the tournaments, this one at featherweight. Yija taking on Jeong Yeong Lee. And in this matchup, Matt, this has probably been the most commented about with people picking the underdog in Yija based on his toughness, his wrestling ability, his stick-to-itiveness. Now, he got knocked out like a little over a year ago against Karim Wali that ended up on the season down at bantamweight and ended up losing his fight. So it's a little bit of weird mix-up matchup. To me, it was the fact that Yija, like, he just hasn't fought a very high level of competition compared to Jeong Yeong Lee. And when I look at the fight, I think Lee is a good enough guy at defending some of the takedowns. And once he does get taken down, he's really quick to get the first move to get back up. But I just think his striking so much more superior to Yija's. And that's why I have Lee in the matchup.
This is my problem. I think Lee looked really good on the show, and I think he's going to impress in this matchup, but I will be curious to see how he looks in the UFC if he is able to get there, because I really like what he's able to showcase on the feet with some of his striking. It's just his hand speed's weird, because he has kind of slow hands, but he throws really well in combination. He throws weird strikes that you don't really see coming, so he does require a lot of feints and a lot of knowledge of the game, which he does have a high level of, but I'm just curious to see how some of those skill sets will go against some guys who are going to mix it up, wrestle with him a little bit, throw feints up top to get him to strike, and then go underneath. So I do have Lee in the matchup, but again, I will be very curious to see how he looks in the UFC afterwards.
Carlos, who we got in the main event? We're getting there, Carlos. Just you hang on. Fender Jazz Bellator's on CBS for the main card. 3-fight main card. Like it's 1999. I don't know what they're doing there, but Brennan Ward, Sabah Hamasi is a great fight. In the matchup, again, Lee in this one is favored. He's about a minus 245 favorite. Yija plus 200. And if you look at Fight Night picks for the total votes, the Monsoon,
He won via knockout very fast.
Big winner over there, taking on Berkamov. 58% going with Lee to get the win. Cool Banana Boy looks like Lee's beaten better opponents. He went ham when he was the Road FC champ, and then he took a few years off. And for the Monsoon, a big-time win there against Berkamov, taking that Lorenz Larkin. What a fun fighter to watch. Matt, we get into the main event of the road to UFC. If you want to... Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a disgusting knockout. You have Anshul Jubli taking on Jeka Saragih, and I didn't talk about this in the original prediction video, but Jeka Saragih, if you go over to his Instagram, loves wearing the business pants with the MLG jersey. He absolutely loves the business pant look. So, a really fun fight between these guys, really closely lined. People kind of gone back and forth on the pick, but I will say this. If you're an Indonesian MMA fan, and a lot of you showed up in the comment section, a lot of you subscribed for the first time, we thank you, because a lot of people behind both of these fighters, as I struggle to get it out. For Anshul Jubli, trains out of Soma, which is a gym in Indonesia. For Jeka Saragih, he is the native of Indonesia. So great to see both of these guys represented, and ultimately, I mean, unless we get a draw or no contest, they end up in the UFC. So I love this matchup, but when you look at this one, Matt, so many different things that you could talk about in the fight.
It's a really fun matchup, and again, I discussed the size difference between these guys quite a bit, because I do think it will play a factor. I do think Jubli, being the bigger guy, having a good jab, I know he will get into a brawl maybe a little bit more than you would like, because he is a good technician from the outside when he just allow himself to stay there, but I do think Saragih is the more well-rounded out of these two, and I do think that if he gets the fight late, he can have a lot of success, but the thing is, I'm still going to go with the size, with the physicality, and I hate that I'm saying this, but with some of those brawling tactics of Jubli, I just think that Saragih will play that game a little bit with him, especially early on, and I think that's a really dangerous time to do that. But what I do like out of this final matchup that we do get in the road to the UFC is, this is by far the most competitive of the matchups, I would say. This is a very well-rounded fight, very well-matched fight, and it's one of those fights, too, that could be a fight of the night when it's all said and done. It could be a back-and-forth one, we get multiple knockdowns. I'm very excited for this matchup.
So, Saragih was a minus 105 or thereabouts, an underdog. He's minus 130, so he's actually the favorite now. And Anshul Jubli open plus 145. He got down to a minus 120. He's a plus 107. So now the odds have flipped on these two guys. For me, I'm still going with Jeka Saragih. When I look at the matchup, again, I think he's a more unorthodox striker, and I don't like that Anshul Jubli's strike defense is... I'm holding those hands out there. I'm holding them out, and I'm not really moving my head. And for Saragih, he doesn't have to throw those spinning attacks that we know him for, but I do like the kicks that he has to the legs, to the body. I do like the spinning attacks, and I like his jiu-jitsu, and the fact that he's fought some bigger guys. He's a smaller guy for this weight class, but he does have good sweeps, and for Anshul Jubli, his wrestling is pretty darn good.
It is.
It hasn't been against a great level of competition, but it is really, really good. And his upper body strength, the fact that he can kind of ride, if he's going from side control to half guard, he can really kind of pressure his way around some of the other fighters that he's taking on. I like Saragih in the matchup, but if I have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes on this one, very close. Yeah, 53% Jubli, 47% Saragih. So over in the comments section, Prince Vegeta-san going with King of the Lions. First last, I got Jeka. Should be a fun one. I think so too. Star Smith 77 Porter going with Jubli. And Wiseman saying Jubli's going to get caught. So that one is tough. Craig Hart, Jubli doesn't have a lot of fights. No, he doesn't. Yusaku Kinoshita taking on Adam Fugitt. And if you look at this matchup, Matt, I said it earlier. Like, Park and Tiuliulin's a tough one to try and call. I think that Kinoshita is a very, very high-level prospect.
He is.
But you got to answer those questions against a guy like Fugitt, because if you look at him and his skill set, his Muay Thai's on point, multiple Muay Thai champion or national champion. He was a champion with X1 MMA World Events or World Events MMA. He had that crazy underdog knockout win over with the LFA against Solomon Renfro. And in his UFC debut against Michael Morales on very, very, very short notice, he looked great in the first round, and that's what you want to see. I know he ended up losing, and he lost as the fight went on, but he looked really, really good early. Fugitt's one of those guys, tricky southpaw, really good right hook, check right hook. I know you like what he has, and again, I think you're going to echo it. Like, a lot of questions are going to be answered here.
This is a tough matchup for him, though, because Kinoshita is so much faster. Like, so much faster, especially if he gets this into boxing range. I do like Fugitt on the outside if he is able to incorporate his kicks, but if he's not able to do that, I think it's going to be difficult for him in that boxing range. I know you bring up the check right hook, some of the left straights, but the problem is those are somewhat telegraphed attacks. He does have kind of wonky striking. I know he does have good accolades in striking, but he's not the fastest guy. He's not the most orthodox guy. He is a little bit... Think of Gerald Meerschaert, but without the pop in his hands. I know that's a weird comp. Gerald Meerschaert just dropped Bruno Silva, though.
Yeah,
he looked great. I was just saying, for Fugitt, I do think this is a difficult matchup for him. That's why I do like Kinoshita quite a bit.
First Last is saying Fugitt is a live dog. Cool Banana Boy saying hit the leg for Matt and Craig. But the other thing, if you look at it, Craig Hart saying I live 30 minutes away from Art of War MMA. Yeah, going against him, I guess. So Pacific Northwest stand up. But if you look at it for Fugitt, what I love out of all of his fights is he starts out of that that rangy, tricky, far away southpaw stance. That's where I was going with it. But he really does throw a roundhouse kick, and he really disguises it well, because I'll start on the legs, then I'll go to the body, then I'll go to the head, and then it keeps the guy guessing. It's hard to kick,
though, when a guy's at close range.
That is true. And if you look at it for Kinoshita, the only thing that I can see for Fugitt is he pushes that pace. He's always pressuring his opponent, and Kinoshita likes to go for that pullback. We saw it on the regional scene. We saw it over on Dana White's Contender Series. And that's where he could get stuck just waiting, and Fugitt's able to pull away. So I think it's going to be a really fun fight. I know you're kind of going with Kinoshita. 81% at Fight Night picks at Kinoshita, and it seems like a really favorite heavy type of card. But in this matchup too, I like Kinoshita for the fact that I agree with you. I think he's a little bit more active with his hands, and he really does have a speed advantage over a lot of guys.
Oh, without a doubt, but definitely in this matchup, and that's why I do favor him quite a bit.
All right, it should be a fun fight. We move forward, Matt. Possible fight of the night.
It's a fun one.
The return of Ho Choi taking on Kyle Nelson, and for Choi, eye injury or thinning of what was it, the cornea. So that one was kind of scary. The fact that he broke his arm, he had a plate and screws in there. He tore his ACL before the Charles Jourdain fight. He's 3 fights on the skids, and out of those, I mean, just a constant walking fight of the night. One in 2016 that made it to the UFC Hall of Fame. One against Jeremy Stevens where he got knocked out in the second round. One against Charles Jourdain where he got knocked out in the second round. Ho Choi's last win, 2016 over Thiago Tavares in the first round. And for Kyle Nelson, 1-4 in the UFC. And the only win over Polo Reyes, who's no longer in the UFC. So for both of these guys, no wins over current UFC fighters. Hopefully barring, again, a draw or no contest. The guy gets a win this weekend. But when you look at this one, Matt, it's 2-3 years ago, Ho Choi all day.
Oh, yeah.
Present day, with all the time away and the injuries, I have no idea what Ho Choi is going to look like.
And that's the problem. Without all the question marks, Ho Choi, without a doubt, twice on Sunday. But with the time off, with all the injuries, it does start to add up a lot of question marks in your mind. And at a certain point, do they start to outweigh where he was in the division compared to where Kyle Nelson is? Because Kyle Nelson is what he is. I don't think we're going to get some new and improved Kyle Nelson this time out. He's going to brawl a little bit. He's going to wrestle a little bit. I think he's going to be at a big disadvantage on the feet, though. That's the one thing about Ho Choi. I know he's lost recent fights by TKO, and I guess the Swanson fight wasn't a loss by stoppage, but he took so much damage in that fight. My point is for Choi, if he does look like even the guy who was in the Charles Jourdain fight, there's still a good opportunity for him to win this one. Like, he still put Jourdain down, and that's what I hope doesn't happen. Even if Choi wins this fight, I hope they build him back up from Kyle Nelson level of opponents. I hope he doesn't win this fight. Let's say he wins by stoppage early on. Then they go, hey, you want to fight Billy Q next? Like, something stupid like that to try to fast track him back to where he once was. Because I think Choi is still young enough that maybe he can get back on track if he's able to string a couple wins together. But this is a really important fight for him, because if he doesn't win this one, this is it. Like, this is the fight to get you back on track. If you don't beat Kyle Nelson, I don't really know where he goes from here. I doubt they let him take another really long layoff and then fight another guy who's further down in the rankings. So I think this is kind of do or die for the Korean Superboy, but I do have him in the matchup.
Like, we're bringing up Topology just to see who's in around the UFC. Maybe a guy like Luis Saldana, maybe somebody in the realm of like it really is tough to tell. Chase Hooper, they probably wouldn't do. Like, it really does get tricky when you're trying to matchmake for a guy like that.
It kind of gets to this point. There's some guys who go on losing streaks. Think of like an Andre Arlovsky. He had lost, 5 or 6 fights in a row. It looked really bad, but he was able to kind of get his career back together. Then there's guys like Renan Barão, who were much younger in their careers. Like, Renan Barão just gets out of his prime.
Just caught up.
Exactly. And then once he starts to lose, it's a little bit different, though. He was never really able to regain his momentum. So for Ho Choi, this is his kind of Renan Barão versus Andre Ewell fight. If he's able to win it, then maybe get back on track. If he doesn't, this is probably it for him. But again, I still have him in the fight.
Over there in the chat, why is everything so late? Why are the prelims so late? The fight card was supposed to take place in Seoul, South Korea. The Korean Zombie is supposed to be in the main event. And Korean Zombie's out due to injury. They move it in December down to Vegas. So that's why the fights are still late, because Road to the UFC, the tournament that's on this card, is centered around the Asian competitors that are found on it. So that's why it is so late. But in this matchup, I think for Choi, I liked the hand speed. I liked the boxing. I liked the movement on the feet, but not the fact that he would brawl in the pocket. For Kyle Nelson, I liked the wrestling. I liked the body work. I liked the kicks. I don't like the weight cut to 145. Like, Kyle Nelson could very well win this fight, and you look silly for taking Doo-Ho Choi. So again, I do have Doo-Ho Choi in the matchup, but it really is a toss-up because you don't know what Choi's going to look like.
NBA reference. He's like Kemba Walker at this point. Like, Kemba Walker signed a 10-day contract with the Dallas Mavericks because they needed a secondary ball handler and someone who could shoot a little bit. He scored like 32 in his first game, and then his knee started to hurt again like it always does, and he wasn't able to fulfill even the 10-day contract. So again, for Choi, this is do or die. You do not get another Kyle Nelson matchup in your UFC tenure.
All right, make sure you toss a like when we move on to the next one, Matt. Marcin Tybura is taking on Blagoy Ivanov, and everybody in the Bellator chat saying, can you believe that Blagoy's fighting on the same night as Fedor? Now, they're not fighting each other, and Blagoy once did fight with Bellator. He went 4-1 over there before he became the World Series champ, and then he had that one fight in the PFL. In the UFC, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. He didn't beat Junior Dos Santos. Yorgan De Castro beat Junior Dos Santos. Remember that. But when you do look at this matchup, Matt, both these guys possess similar skills. Tybura can be a good offensive wrestler. Tybura can slow down fights. Tybura can strike from the outside. Ivanov does all the same things, but they do them in slightly different ways. So when you look at a matchup like this, Matt, Blagoy Ivanov, combat sambo is the base. Marcin Tybura, that tricky kickboxing on the outside. I know you like this matchup. It could be great.
Could be awful,
could be
though.
bad. And some people thought that this could be a fight of the night. Sauce, fun fact, Ivanov beat Fedor in the 2008 Combat Sambo, tournament. So who do you have here? Because Josh Pierce is saying Blagoy upset incoming.
He very well could, and that's the thing about Blagoy Ivanov. He's really good defensively. Like, if you get in the pocket and just start throwing with him, he's going to be a half beat slower than you, but he's still going to land his shots. They're still going to be damaging enough. He has a pretty good chin at this stage of his career still, and that's the thing about Blagoy. It's not like he's getting stopped left, right, and center. Like, he's having gritty fights that are very close by the time they're done, so I think for all those reasons, he can make this a very close fight, but again, what did I just bring up? He always seems to be kind of a half step slower, and I don't think Marcin Tybura is the striker that he used to be, but I still think he's a better striker than Blagoy Ivanov at this stage of his career. Now, if they do get into a lot of clinch work and a lot of wrestling, I'll be really curious to see what happens if Blagoy can somehow even get a trip maybe from the clinch, end up in a top position, because if he's able to do that, Marcin Tybura is a good grappler, but he's not a guy who's going to sweep you off of his back or anything. So I think for those reasons, maybe Blagoy could go out there and win a few rounds. I just do favor the activity I've seen from Tybura a lot more.
For Blagoy Ivanov, I didn't touch on this when we made the video at the start of the week, and then I kind of kicked myself after the fact because I wanted to make this point and I didn't. Blagoy Ivanov ties up his opponent so well, and he gets you into a spot where it's not a tie clinch, but he's just kind of clinching you up like it's a hockey fight, and then all of a sudden, he gets your head down below his head. He puts a lot of top pressure on you. He holds you there, and he tires out his opponents with his body weight. Blagoy is so good at that, and just threatening with some front chokes to then open up his offense. That steady right hand that's out there. So I see Star Smith Porter. There's over 300 people out here, but there's not enough likes. You got to toss the like out there. The Wiseman Tybura is my captain. But if you have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes, I expect this one to be close. 88% have Tybura. Bappa.
This fight could be like two large men fighting over a wing of Buffalo Wild Wings. There could be a lot of clinch work, a lot of heavy breathing involved. Like, there's a world where this fight is absolutely terrible.
Nicholas Lamb, my dude Blagoy does not know what a diet is. He weighed in at what? 256.5.
Lean and mean. How dare you?
Yeah.
But again, I do think for all the reasons that I said, like, Tybura is more active from the outside. I don't think it's going to be a great fight if we just get an outside Marcin Tybura, but I think it'll be enough to win this. And this is, again, one of those important matchups where you wonder how many more opportunities both guys are going to get against other top 15 level fighters, because they're going to start being used as, hey, we have this up-and-coming prospect. Do you want to fight X, Y, or Z? Like, Tybura just found himself in that position against Romanov not that long ago. So, again, I think it's an important fight for both guys, but I do have Tybura.
Yeah, it was wild that Tybura won that fight, and it wasn't scored a draw. 10-8 round 1 Romanov, and then Tybura just kind of pulls away round 2, round 3. But that should be a fun one nonetheless, Matt. The co-main event, Da Un Jung taking on Devin Clark. And in this fight, Matt, Devin Clark, he can wrestle. Devin Clark, he can strike his way into the clinch to then try and wrestle. Daeun Jung can strike from the outside. He can offensively wrestle in some of his fights, like his fight against William Knight. I mean, that guy's got a fight coming up. But when you look at both of these guys, Matt, I say that this could be like, I know it's co-main event, so it's not a sneaky fight of the night type, but Devin Clark, when he gets into some of those barn burners, gets clipped, and he bleeds a lot. And Daeun Jung hits guys really hard. Now, for Jung, his last time out, the double jab right hand from Dustin Jacoby was the one that knocked him down and out. He got right back up, but he was walking the other way. So the fight was over. For Jung, that was his first loss since losing to Rocky Martinez years and years and years ago. So it's kind of crazy that it comes full circle. But when you look at it in this matchup, Matt, I like Jung for the fact that he's more active on the outside, and he really can string together his combinations. I think he's a really slick boxer. Defensive grappling is what it is. And Devin Clark, I might be in the position where you're chopped liver, like a lot of fans sometimes get, because I thought he was going to look great against Murzakanov, and he didn't. So maybe I'm just buying low on Devin Clark. But for me, I do like Daeun Jung in the match.
Clark's just taken a lot of damage at this stage of his career, and he was a pretty good, well-rounded fighter at one point. Like, if you just isolate the first minute of his fight against Rakic, that guy's the top 6, top 7 probably, beating a lot of guys in the top 15. But the problem is, like you said, Devin Clark has accumulated damage and wears damage a lot in his fights. And Daeun Jung is a damaging striker. So I think for those reasons, it's a difficult matchup for Clark because they're kind of trying to build Jung off of Clark. Not that Devin Clark was ever a huge name in the division, but he was always one of those borderline top 15 guys who would kind of offer anybody a difficult fight. And then it has been a pretty difficult run as of late. I just think Clark's going to struggle on the outside. If he threw more leg kicks, maybe he would have an answer for some of the boxing of Jung. He just doesn't have good enough activity with that strike for me to really have confidence in him having success on that longer range. And for all those reasons, that's why I like Daeun Jung.
Well, there's two big things here, and I see it first last. Daeun has questionable fight IQ, and then before, Cool Banana Boy Jung tied against Alvi. He dropped Alvi in the third round, and he rallied in the third round. I'm surprised it ended up a draw because Alvi won round 1, round 2, and Jung won round 3, and I thought it would have been a 10-9, but either way, and if you look at it this way, Mr. Ricky, when are the fights live? They start in an hour and 20 minutes. And actually, for Canadians, it's a Fight Pass card. So, again, Aaron Brownstetter tweeted that one out there. Maybe I should let you know that because it is going to be on Fight Pass. Matt, the main event, Derek Lewis taking on Sergey Spivac. Lewis was supposed to fight Spivac in the main event, November, but Lewis was out of the fight. Spivac just kind of stuck on the sidelines. Kennedy and Zechiku taking on Iwan Kutsalaba. That was your main event that night in a 3-rounder, and Zechiku got the big-time win. If you look at it this way, Matt, so for Lewis versus Spivac, the first pairing, we picked Spivac. The second pairing, spoiler alert, we both picked Spivac. So I don't really see much being different in this fight. Lewis came in at 265, which is what we kind of expected. And for Sergey Spivac, it's just, to me, we've seen this play out before. When Lewis fought Marcin Tybura, pretty similar skill set matchup. 100%. I know Spivac didn't beat Tybura when they fought each other, but Spivac is kind of steadily gained. Now, what does Spivac struggle against? Pressure strikers. And if Derek Lewis marches forward and strikes, he could definitely win. It's just these are the fights that I think of. The fight against Travis Brown, back up, right until the end when he finishes them. The fight that he takes on against Tybura. The fight that he had against Pavlovich. I mean, the power is just going to back you up regardless. But the Tai Tuivasa fight, too. Like, he just started to give up a lot of ground. And I think that's where Spivac can take over. And the Spivac fight that I go to, that I think lends credence to my argument, is the fight that he had against Alexei Oleinik. Now, did he look as good as Overeem did with all those knees to Oleinik? No, but his strikes were really, really good. And I think if he mixes in the takedowns, he had to worry about Oleinik from that respect. I think if he mixes them in against Lewis, I will take Spivac.
We have the same overall point, but I'm going to get there in a slightly different way.
Okay.
Derek Lewis is really good at fighting guys like Sergey Spivac. Like, his career is full of him defending a few takedowns early and then knocking guys out late. Like, that's just what Derek Lewis has built his whole legacy off of, basically. He's either tied for or number 1 in the Division 4 knockouts. Like, he's been around for a long time. He has knocked a lot of dudes out. Again, I go back to the Shamil Abdurakhimov fight. I think that is the most closely tied to fight you can look at for Sergey Spivac, because like in the Abdurakhimov matchup, Derek Lewis had a huge grappling disadvantage in this one. Against a guy who likes to clinch quite a bit in Sergey Spivac and likes to go for a lot of takedowns from that clinch position. And I do think Lewis is going to give up some of those takedowns early. The real question mark for me is, can he just avoid getting damaged early in the fight to still be effective late? Because the greatest lie anyone's ever told is that Derek Lewis has bad cardio. Like, I know even I kind of ragged on him for, hey, he weighed in what he normally weighs in at, and he didn't come in at like 250 like some people have speculated. But even at 265, the guy can still hit pretty hard and late in fights. Like, even at the max 4 heavyweight, he still has pretty good cardio. So I think Derek Lewis, if he can take this one late, makes Sergey Spivac be uncomfortable on the feet, like you had said, because Spivac does not react to pressure all that well. And if Derek Lewis does start to gain in confidence, get some of that, like, and I can't believe we're referencing this in a positive light, but get that Darren Till, like, kind of momentum moving downhill, I think Lewis can have a lot of success. I just think those early moments where he is on his back eating that damage, they're going to be too much for him. And I could see the fight being stopped by TKO for Sergey Spivac, because I think a lot of people, and this will be my last point, have gone on for a minute, it feels like, oh, Derek Lewis by knockout, Sergey Spivac submission. Spivac could easily get a TKO via ground and pound if he gets into that, like, mount position, like we saw in the Tai Tuivasa fight.
And we've seen it. I mean, the Curtis Blades knockout win that Derek Lewis has, going for the takedown, hit him on the way in, and serial chiller, yes, Mark Wildhair slept Spivac in 30 seconds, and Aspinall had harder sparring than Spivac. I mean, Aspinall just walked across the cage and made it look so easy, and Spivac just kind of shelled up, and then all of a sudden, he's down on the mat, and that's the end of the fight. So he loses by TKO.
Get better soon, Tom Aspinall.
At Fight Night Picks, he's on his way back. 57% going with Lewis, 43% going with Sergey Spivac. Spivac is the favorite in the matchup, but for me, I mean, the whole is he a quitter, isn't he a quitter? Just my 2 cents. Don't say that. He's not a quitter. But for Derek Lewis, he definitely has struggled in some of these recent fights that he's had in Texas, but he's had a ton of success at the UFC Apex in Vegas, and that's where this fight takes place. So a really tricky fight if you do look at it nuts and bolts wise. For me, I like Spivac with the complete skill set. But again, Derek Lewis with the knockout ability, you always have to worry. So
and in heavyweight, power's always the last thing to go. Like, that's in every fighter, no matter what division, but especially at heavyweight. We've seen guys in the top 15 who are 38, 39, 40, 41, even like 42, who stick around for quite a long time. So Derek Lewis has an opportunity to go back there and get a really nice stoppage win. I just think his time's kind of up being a top 15 fighter.
Matt, Fedor is 9 years older and he's fighting for a title tonight. How wild is that over Bellator 290?
Fedor's one of the GOATs, though.
We will throw it on back. I mean, Derek Lewis, knockout king in the UFC's heavyweight division. Tatsuro Taira taking on Jesus Aguilar. Thanks, everybody who's joined so far. Toss a like. I've got Taira.
So do I. Again, I've been really impressed by what I've seen in the UFC. I was a little bit hesitant at first before he came over, but I've really liked what I've seen so far.
So both with Taira in the matchup. The next fight, Jeong Yeong Park taking on Denis Tiuliulin. Ever so slightly going with Park, but if Tiuliulin wins this one, I wouldn't be surprised.
Again, these fights on the Fight of the Night screen aren't there because it's going to be a one-sided beatdown. It's normally because it's going to be a really close fight and an entertaining fight at that. I think it will live up to those expectations, but I do still have Park.
All right, in the next matchup, Matt, just a reminder, Mandy Boom, Jeong Kim is off this card, so don't forget that
All of,
one.
Like 4 people are sad.
Hyun Sung Park taking on Seung Choi. This is the first fight in the Road to UFC tournament. Going with Hyun Sung Park in the flyweight division.
I just think he's the more well-rounded fighter out of the two, but I also have Park.
All right, both of us going with Park in that one. We have Rinya Nakamura taking on Toshiomi Kazama in the matchup. I'm going with Nakamura here.
So am I, and I genuinely think he has the highest ceiling out of any of these 8 prospects.
Yeah, Kazama's got a great shot with that jiu-jitsu. Look out for it. Yizha taking on Jeong Yeong Lee. And in the matchup, I'm going with Lee, but a lot of people going with the toughness, the durability, and just the fact that the guy has a motor with his takedowns in Yizha.
Got that dog in him. I do like Lee in the matchup, though. I've been really impressed by his striking up until this point.
All right, the finals, the lightweight Grand Prix, but it is the Road to UFC tournament. I'm going with Jeka Saragih in a fight that should be fun, and I can't wait to see what we're going to get.
I think this will be by far the most competitive matchup out of these, and the odds would suggest that too. The odds are very, very close. I like Jubli in the matchup. Again, I think on the outside is a little bit better. He does have good offensive wrestling, but again, this is a close matchup that should be fun no matter where the fight takes place, and that always makes for a good fight.
All right, Matt. In the main card, Yusaku Kinoshita taking on Adam Fugitt. I'm going with Kinoshita. I really do like him. I can't wait to see the kicks out of Fugitt, and I really do like that check rate hook. So watch out for this one, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but I have Kinoshita here in his UFC debut.
I like Kinoshita in his debut in this one.
All right, Matt. No fade on the Dana White's Contender Series fighter. We have Duho Choi taking on Kyle Nelson. If somebody tells you for sure, I know exactly what's going to happen in this fight.
Never listen to a thing they ever tell you.
I don't believe them. I'm going with Choi, but like I have no idea with the layoff, the injuries, and so on and so forth. Kyle Nelson. Good wrestling that nobody talks about. Good kicks, good body work. Again, I like the boxing out of Choi, but it's tough.
It's an oddly important fight, but I do have Duho Choi. I'll be interested to see how he looks, though.
Tybura taking on Blagoy Ivanov. Another tough one. This one at heavyweight, I'm going with Marcin Tybura.
I am too, but these guys fight in very similar ways, so it could be a close matchup.
All right, co-main event, Da Un Jung taking on Devin Clark. I'm buying low on Devin Clark, and I'm going with Da Un Jung. That might not have made sense.
Maybe Clark can completely out-wrestle him. I doubt it, but there is a world out there where it could happen. I do like Da Un Jung in this matchup.
I mean, hey, Devin Clark's second camp, training at Elevation. The first camp
a new man
was against a really tough guy, the professional, Azamat Murzakanov. Matt, in the main event, Derek Lewis taking on Sergey Spivac. I've got Spivac. Again, knockout ability. Last thing to go with that power.
100%.
Derek Lewis can definitely go out there and do it. And if he pushes the pace, Sergey Spivac does not like that pace, and he does not like that pressure. So I'll go Spivac. It's another tough one.
Like, I definitely think Derek Lewis is the better cardio in this matchup. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Like, he carries his power late. He has oddly good output. He throws head kicks. Like, nothing about Derek Lewis makes any sense whatsoever as an MMA fighter. He's always going to be fun to watch, and that's why he can keep on getting these main event slots, and we're always going to be fairly excited for them. But, again, I just think his time as being one of those top 10 guys you're always going to watch out for is a little bit past, and that's why I have Sergey Spivak.
Listen, you're probably rocking two screens. Bellator 290's giving you the promo, so I'm assuming that they're going to have a bunch of post-lim fights, if that's what they're doing. So, listen, you got a little bit of time before the card. Check out the Fighting Handbook with Fight Night Picks, Road to UFC. We broke down the card in incredible detail. We talked about the first Road to tournament that was Road to Japan. Mizuto Hirota was on that. It was crazy. Teruto Ishihara as well. They both won their brackets. Well, no, they fought each other in the finals and it was a draw, so they both got contracts. But a lot of fun over there. Make sure you check that out. We're going to have UFC 284 videos coming out later on tonight. You know why it's on Sunday? Because there's no football tomorrow, Matt, and that's why. But it should be a lot of fun. UFC 284 from Western Australia. Perth, the site, the first card in Perth since UFC 221. Romero versus Rockhold.
Wow, what a fight.
Mwah. Giving him the kiss against the cage. Should be a lot of fun. Make sure you check it out. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.